The sharp sound of a termination letter sliding across a polished conference table echoed louder than anyone expected. A young woman stood frozen, her employee badge still hanging around her neck, her first-day welcome folder resting unopened in her trembling hands. She had waited years for this opportunity, and it disappeared before lunchtime because the company's ruthless CEO believed she was nothing more than another unqualified hire. But only a few floors above that heartbreaking moment, the board of directors was preparing for an emergency meeting that would leave the same CEO speechless. Within the next hour, the woman he had humiliated would walk back into the building, not as a fired employee, but as the person everyone would soon rise to greet with two unforgettable words. Ms.Owner. Before we begin this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to the Hard-Working Dad channel if you believe that kindness, second chances, and hard work always find a way to shine through life's darkest moments. The morning sun covered the city with a warm golden light as Rowan Mercer adjusted the old tie he had worn for nearly 10 years. Every wrinkle on his face told the story of sacrifices made in silence. After losing his wife to illness when his daughter was only 6 years old, he had carried the weight of two parents on tired shoulders that never complained. He worked construction during the day, repaired neighbors' appliances during weekends, and spent countless sleepless nights helping his daughter study under the dim kitchen light because he believed education was the one gift that poverty could never steal. Every paycheck disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived, yet somehow there was always enough for school books, bus fare, and birthday cakes that were homemade but filled with love. Rowan often skipped meals without telling his daughter, pretending he had already eaten at work, because seeing her smile was worth every empty stomach. His daughter, Maren Mercer, had inherited her mother's gentle heart and her father's determination. She graduated at the top of her university class despite working evening shifts at a bookstore to help pay expenses. She never complained about wearing the same coat for several winters or missing social events because she understood every dollar mattered. When she finally received an offer from the prestigious Sterling Dynamics Corporation, it felt as though every sacrifice her father had made was finally being rewarded. Rowan polished her shoes the night before her first day while pretending not to cry, knowing that the little girl he once carried on his shoulders was now walking into a future they had dreamed about together. Sterling Dynamics was known as one of the city's most successful companies, but inside its towering glass headquarters, fear often replaced respect. The company's CEO, Victor Hargrove, believed weakness had no place in business. Employees whispered his name with anxiety because he judged people within seconds, valuing appearances more than character. Expensive suits, confident voices, and prestigious family names mattered to him far more than honesty or effort. To Victor, compassion slowed progress, and humility belonged to those who lacked ambition. Maren arrived early, holding her father's old leather briefcase because buying a new one had seemed unnecessary. She smiled politely at everyone she passed, grateful simply to be there. But before she could even finish orientation, Victor happened to walk through the department. His eyes immediately settled on her worn shoes, simple clothing, and second-hand briefcase. Without asking about her qualifications or achievements, he quietly assumed she had been hired through favoritism or lowered standards. That careless assumption became the beginning of one of the greatest mistakes of his career. By late morning, Maren was called into a conference room where Victor personally informed her that the company expected a higher standard and that her services would not be required. Around the room, several managers lowered their eyes in embarrassment. Nobody dared challenge the CEO. Maren accepted the termination papers with dignity, thanked everyone for the opportunity despite her heartbreak, and quietly walked toward the elevator. Every step felt heavier than the last. She remembered her father hugging her before sunrise, proudly saying that her mother would have been smiling from heaven. The thought nearly broke her spirit, yet she refused to let anyone see her cry. Outside the building, Rowan was waiting across the street because he wanted to surprise his daughter with lunch during her break. Instead, he saw her walking out hours earlier than expected, holding an envelope instead of hope. One look at her face told him everything. She collapsed into his embrace, apologizing as though she had somehow failed him. Rowan simply held her tighter, reminding her that losing one opportunity could never erase years of courage and hard work. Even though his own heart shattered watching her tears, he smiled gently because fathers often choose strength when their children need it most. While father and daughter sat together on a nearby park bench trying to understand what had happened, something extraordinary was unfolding inside Sterling Dynamics. The board of directors had received confidential legal documents that morning regarding the final wishes of the company's late founder, Eleanor Sterling. Years earlier, Eleanor had quietly established a trust after being inspired by a scholarship recipient whose identity remained hidden from nearly everyone. The documents revealed that the trust's primary beneficiary had officially inherited controlling ownership of Sterling Dynamics following the completion of specific legal conditions finalized that very morning. Board members gathered in complete confusion until the company's legal advisor opened the sealed envelope containing the beneficiary's identity. Silence filled the room. Several directors stared in disbelief before reading the name again to make sure there had been no mistake. The name written on every page was Maren Mercer. Years earlier, Eleanor Sterling had secretly funded scholarships for promising students facing extraordinary hardships. She had personally followed Maren's academic journey after learning how Rowan had sacrificed everything to educate his daughter. Eleanor saw qualities that could never be measured by wealth: integrity, resilience, compassion, and humility. With no children of her own and disappointed by corporate leaders obsessed with profit, she quietly decided that one day her life's work should belong to someone who understood ordinary people. She never informed Maren because she wanted her success to come through effort rather than privilege. Only after Eleanor's passing did the carefully designed legal process begin, ensuring Maren would inherit ownership only after proving her character through years of independent achievement. The board immediately attempted to contact Maren, only to discover she had already been dismissed by the CEO less than an hour earlier. Panic spread across every executive office. Directors rushed downstairs while legal advisors made urgent phone calls. Victor Hargrove remained completely unaware of the storm approaching him. When Maren and Rowan reluctantly returned to the building after receiving the unexpected phone call, security guards who had watched her leave in sadness now respectfully opened every door. Employees whispered in confusion as the board of directors personally greeted her in the lobby. Victor arrived moments later expecting another routine meeting, only to witness every director standing respectfully before the young woman he had fired. The chairman calmly announced that, according to the founder's legally binding wishes, Maren Mercer was now the majority owner of Sterling Dynamics. Every decision regarding the company's future would ultimately belong to her. The conference room that had humiliated her only hours earlier suddenly became a place of complete silence. Victor's confident expression disappeared as reality settled heavily upon him. The woman he had judged by her clothing and background now possessed the authority to end his career with a single signature. Many employees secretly hoped Maren would immediately dismiss Victor as revenge. After all, nobody could blame her. He had embarrassed her publicly, questioned her worth without evidence, and crushed the dreams she and her father had built together for years. Even Rowan quietly wondered whether justice demanded consequences. But hardship had taught Maren something far more powerful than revenge. She understood that pain should never become permission to create more pain. Looking around the room, she saw frightened employees who had spent years working under fear instead of encouragement. She realized the real problem was not one man's arrogance alone but an entire culture that rewarded appearances while ignoring humanity. Instead of acting with anger, Maren began transforming Sterling Dynamics from the inside. Anonymous employee assistance funds were expanded. Tuition programs were introduced for workers and their children. Hiring practices shifted to focus on ability rather than background. Managers were trained to lead with respect instead of intimidation. Maintenance staff, receptionists, cleaners, and junior employees found themselves invited to meetings where their ideas mattered for the first time. The atmosphere inside the company slowly changed. Smiles replaced whispered anxiety. Productivity increased because people finally felt valued rather than merely controlled. Victor remained CEO temporarily under close board supervision, but every day became a lesson in humility. For the first time in his career, he was required to listen rather than command. Watching Marin earn genuine respect without raising her voice forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about the leader he had become. Months later, he voluntarily resigned, admitting privately that he had mistaken authority for greatness and fear for leadership. His departure was quiet, but its lesson echoed throughout the organization. Rowan never asked for recognition. He continued living modestly, still repairing broken appliances for neighbors because helping others had become part of who he was. Yet employees often noticed Marin visiting his small home after work, sharing simple dinners around the same kitchen table where dreams had once been built beside overdue bills and worn textbooks. Success had changed her circumstances, but it never changed her heart. She understood that every achievement carried her father's fingerprints because he had believed in her long before the world ever did. News of Sterling Dynamics' transformation spread across the business community. Other companies studied its remarkable rise in employee satisfaction, innovation, and financial performance. Investors discovered that kindness and profitability were never enemies. Communities benefited from scholarships established in Eleanor Sterling's memory, each one dedicated to hard-working single parents raising children with impossible dreams. Marin insisted every scholarship application be reviewed without photographs or family income displayed first because she never wanted appearances to decide someone's future again. Years later, visitors entering Sterling Dynamics would often pause beside a simple framed photograph displayed in the main lobby. It showed a construction worker wearing dusty boots standing proudly beside his smiling daughter on the morning of her first job. Beneath the photograph was a small plaque that read, "Character is built long before opportunity arrives." Employees passed those words every morning, remembering that greatness rarely announces itself through expensive clothing or impressive titles. More often, it quietly grows inside ordinary people who refuse to give up despite extraordinary hardship. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends and family, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad so together we can continue celebrating stories of hope, sacrifice, and the incredible strength found in ordinary families. Special request, please comment below with the words, "Kindness always wins," if you believe no one should ever be judged by their appearance, background, or circumstances. As the evening sun painted the city in warm shades of gold, Rowan looked at his daughter with the same quiet pride he had carried since the day she first learned to read. He realized that success had never been about wealth, power, or ownership. It had always been about raising a person whose heart remained gentle even after being wounded by the world. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all, because companies can build towers, fortunes can rise and fall, and titles can change overnight, but kindness passed from one generation to the next becomes a legacy that no one can ever take away.